But I've gone to Bermuda many times, so many times that they give me an honorary. I can go in without a passport. Don't ask me how that happened. That's a God thing. As my wife said, look at God. All right? You know, God does stuff like that. You don't even ask for it, just so forth. And for example, I mentioned Bermuda. Not that I like it, but you know, Bermuda's got that pink sand. All right? I didn't get to bring my bottle of sand because I've kept over the years some bottles of sand. Now, I don't know if you know, but you know what makes the sand pink? Stay with me. Influence. It shows that change the atmosphere. If you look at pink sand, all of the sand is not pink. Most of the sand is just sand. But what makes pink sand pink is that there are enough particles mixed through the sand of the coral. And the coral is pink, but it's of such a pink varied nature that all you need in a handful is just a few, and it gives the illusion that it's... Just let that settle. Let that settle. So here it is with us. We don't have to do anything. We just need a season here. We just need a drop of pepper here. We just need some oregano here. I'm not a cook, but I know what I'm talking about. I know what it tastes like. We just need a little bit. You know, I tease some folk because they put so much salt on their food. I said, where's the food? I see the salt. All right? But God is saying, listen, all you got to do is just give him a little bit of your time. That will season it. Give him a little bit of your attention. It will season, and it goes a long way. This making sense? All right? I want you to see how practical it is. God is saying, right, you are my chosen people. 1 Peter. Right? You're chosen, you're selected, you're precious. Because I want to overtake this thing that Satan has made wrong. And you're selected. Remember now, right? You're the Daniels. You're the Esthers. All right? You're the Shadrach, Meshachs, and Abednegos. You're it. We're it. All right? And that's written to say, God can do this again. When you look at it, none of them had access to what we don't have access to. All right? What I want to do now as we talk about that is just kind of look a little bit in terms of, again, going practically. Where it says becoming like Jesus, there's a half sheet there, and I'm going to just transfer to the, because what I want to do is, as I hear Pastor with the presentation here is saying, okay, Daniel had character. By character, we can make influence, we can conduct, and so forth. On your half sheet, you see becoming like Jesus, and the other side, you see really wanting to be like Jesus. So look at becoming like Jesus. What I want us to look at is again, the question, all right? So look at Daniel with this awesome character. I'm so sorry, I keep moving. All right. So look at Daniel with his awesome, come on. So let's talk real now, because I've been there. See, I was raised up in the church. I'm third generation Christian. All right? And so it comes now, said, you know, because I've struggled with this, okay. And when we read carefully, we find that all these people in the Bible, including Daniel, we don't have as much information. Daniel was sterling when we've read on. But I'm sure if you read back far enough, all right, there's some stuff that Daniel had grown through. You see it with Abraham. Don't idolize Abraham because, hey, he had his struggles. But we remember his faith, don't we? David, let's not talk about David. But guess what? I don't remember him for that stuff. I remember that this brother was a man after God's own heart. So I asked him, wow. I mean, it's just this reserved for them that we realize the Bible is saying these are all examples of what God can do through us, right? All right? So now, if Daniel had this character, how do we get this character and conduct and confidence and influence? So just let's look at that a little bit. Let's look at that a little bit. On this sheet here, I just want to stretch your mind, and a lot of this is just kind of get us thinking on that. Becoming like Jesus. According to the big picture of Romans 10, 11, 12, we all want to become like Jesus. Because Daniel's goal was never to become like Daniel. Stop me, somebody. All right? Daniel's goal is never to become Daniel. Daniel was Daniel, and character, as you brought out, Pastor, because Daniel was looking at God. All right? When you look at God, you become the truest you. Many times our problem, even in the church, we're still watching, we're still wanting the rich, quick money like the hip-hop generation. We're making, as you said, heroes out of people who just have gifts, and they have no character. And they scored 15 touchdowns and they slam home runners, but outside you still see the public all the mess going on in their lives. And it's not that we put them down, but they were never meant to worship. They were never meant to be heroes. Right? But we have an opportunity. We can be heroes. We can be life changers, beginning with our lives. So we look at that. We say, well, how do we get this character? How do we become like Jesus? And on that sheet there, just highlighting some key things that is important for all of us as young people and leaders to consider. Spiritual growth, number one. Here it is. How do you get to the point where you can do like the three Hebrew boys? Come on, light the fire. King, we're not going to change our mind, but put us in the fire. Well, you get to the point like Daniel said, listen, I'd rather die than stop talking to God. How do you get there? How do you get there? Did that just happen overnight? Is that just some weird gift Daniel had that we dream we would have? No. It's a result. What Pastor talked about, Daniel's life as we read it was a result of some daily steps. The first big step is that spiritual growth and maturity is daily looking, keeping an accurate picture. The blank is picture. Spiritual growth begins with an accurate picture of God, vision. And that's why we said, beholding, we become changed. And a lot of art, especially in 2014, wow, we got so much videos and we got everything that has a picture. So everything is geared to distract the young believer like yourself not to watch God. So we have a picture of all the mess. You put on the computer and you get a picture of every accident and every storm and everything. And all of that's good information. But it's really geared to distract us from a clear picture and connection with God. So part of our struggle, and whether we're older in this group or younger, part of all our struggle is that we are struggling. How do we keep God in our eyes? That's a part of leadership. But you're going to be a kind of leader, as Daniel, going to influence and impact if you've got an accurate picture of God. All right? And let me just be real, pastors. Part of the problem with the young generation, and I went through it too, is that our Christian environment and culture has passed on a demonic picture of God. Let me tell you what I mean by that, okay? Even in Christian circles, and let me just be very, very real. We see God as the villain. We see Jesus as the friend. So Christmas time is this wonderful Jesus. Stay with me now. Tell me if I'm right. Here's this wonderful Jesus is trying to convince the mean God to love us. All right? So we already got a bad picture of God. We have trouble trusting Jesus, but we hate God because he's a villain, he's an enemy, he's a Grinch. So how can you serve a God? You're saying, Daniel, who is that? How you going to put your life on the line for that judge and mean God that's going to punish you and put you in forever hell? Satan has carefully, by false teaching, in the media, in our lives, by stories, by being around bad people, that God is like that. That's why we have struggling. So now, how do we solve God like that? So you can only go so far. You can go through the motions. You can only go so far. If you're convinced that God is a mean villain, you can only go so far. That's one of the reasons why Jesus came to say, whatever you see in me, that's my daddy. And remember the key verse in the Bible, very basic. For God so loved the world that God sent Jesus. Jesus didn't have to twist his arm. When I got that as a boy born into Christianity, it released me. I couldn't go anywhere. I saw my dad pastor, I saw believers, and I saw all the good and bad in the church. But it's when I got that, I said, this God is crazy about the truth. All through the Bible. When Paul writes, hey, I'm the greatest of sinners because I was a terrorist to the Christian church. When Paul writes, hey, praise be to God. And he writes, who can separate us from the love of God? Even Paul said, God through Jesus. All right? So when you get an accurate picture of God, you see, here's a person that made you, gifted you, empowered you to live joyfully in a rotten world. In fact, God is so awesome. He can make you live in darkness and it will seem like it's bright. Because since sin came in, it's been dark. So here it is now on your forms here, becoming like growing in Jesus. The first thing is a spiritual growth begins with an accurate picture of God. And I've got some text there for you. You can look those up, and each of those give you a good sense that God is crazy about. Now, can you imagine this again? And you kids got to get it. I mean, God is not trying to, and this is where, especially your Caribbean, God is this guy. You better be careful because God is watching you. But see, God is not watching you to catch you do wrong. He already knows the wrong you could do before you did it. So they don't have to watch you to find it out. God is watching, we miss it. God is watching over you and praying for you to do right because he wants you to have joy. Not to check, all right, here's a grade list, he failed. It's the devil that turns you in and Satan that convinces you that his quality is what God has. All right? So we can get there, we can all be saying, oh, listen, Lord, I'll follow you. And you realize that not only is God not like that, God has said, I've written you, I've engraved you, I've tattooed you on the palm of my hands. Oh! Got your head, you say, wait, then you start realizing, God loves me more than all my grandparents and my parents and my friends put together. That's why Jesus said to those followers, he said, listen, if you're going to follow me, because I love you so much, your love for me should be so awesome that your love for your parents would look like hate. Not that you will hate your parents. That's a bad translation. Or you hate your church, and hate your pastor, and hate your friends. No, your love for God will be so awesome that everything else will look like. If you can get that, I can go home. Get that picture of God. Because when I got it, and I wasn't out of the church. See, sometimes it's harder to save you in the church. Some folk are so fine, God can trust you out of the church. But he had to keep me in here to save my soul. All right? And there's struggles in the world, but there's some big struggles in the church. Because being a preacher, you know a lot. You know too much. Hello, somebody. So you got to overcome that, and then now God has the nerve to ask me to become a pastor. You're crazy, brother. Get out of here. You're crazy. That's why Jonah got upset. Don't be too upset at Jonah. I kind of identify with Jonah. What? You want me to go convert the terrorists? Get lost. I'm gone. I'm checked out. Jonah walks away, and God said, let me show you another side of me. By the way, this is extra. All right? God actually converts Nineveh to convert Jonah. The preacher was in the work, in the church, but he still didn't have a heart for wicked people. So in a thought, by the time Jonah opened his mouth, and our text is taken from, it said, we're saying we want Jesus. He said, wait. You done? All he had to do was do an appeal. He didn't get to preach a sermon. Wow. Again, opportunities. All of these biblical characters that God has done, these are some great opportunities. Could you imagine there's stories, pastors, that will be written because of this generation of leaders? I mean, they may not be formally in the Bible, but they'll be known and written and recounted in heaven. Wow. So, you think that. You think ahead, okay, what can I create? What can be left as an eternal memorial? Well, number one, a great, accurate picture of God makes a difference. Number two, spiritual growth is built on the principle of, anybody can guess what that is? Spiritual growth is built on the principle of, anybody can take a stab at that? Okay, with those verses, 1 Corinthians 13 is a big clue. What's that principle?
Love.
Love, right? So what spiritual growth is not, you're not going to grow by, we say, you know what? If you don't come to Jesus, you're going to be dropped in hell. That's never worked. Jonathan Edwards has a famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of the Angry God. And as a picture, I read the memoirs. It said, wow, the brother had a powerful voice. The days when they didn't have microphone. Thousands of people listening. And he would preach, and atheists and people would just, go to Jesus. Because he just said, he had that. He just painted that picture of that little spider over the fire, dropping in, and folk didn't want it. They could just feel the heat. He said, take it. And they wouldn't accept you God out of love. Now, the Bible warns us, be aware that you don't be caught and be lost and go to hell. But that never is the motivation for spiritual growth. You see, if you love folk, you don't have to brainwash them. And sometimes in the church, our job is sometimes we so coerce and make people feel bad, and that only lasts so long. So now, the biggest principle of spiritual growth is love. And Matthew 22 and 1 Corinthians 13 is built on that. So